So let's move on. Previously, what we have done in our last lecture or our last session on the last Sunday, we skimmed through the overall concepts for the LEED, its history, evolution, the significance of it, and how we'll be tackling it and how the things have to be uh, taken forward. And today, we'll be looking after the aspects related with the LEED GA core basic areas, which will be applicable to LEED AP as well, because it becomes the fundamentals for all of these. So we'll be going through each one of those areas as, if you can recall, we have skimmed through these ones, different kind of like systems and their requirements and all of these while we were going through, and we will be focusing today and in the next Sunday on all of these areas in detail so that we can understand how they will be applicable and how we will be going through each one of these with respect to the preparation for our upcoming exam for LEED certifications in the future. Okay, so we will start with the first unit, which is considered as location and transportation. This is considered a very important like unit because design of buildings with respect to the selection of site, and apart from selection, accessibility to the site is very important. So these parameters towards the definition of the site for any functional need that we establish, we have to understand how that site will be assessed, how our existing site conditions have been, and how to manage those gaps which are prevailing on the site towards the further development of it. So some of the key areas will be like location intents, the strategies, transportation intents, how those will be managed, how we are going to opt for the transportation strategies. The way we have developed our intent, that will lead towards developing a strategy. The site development intents and its strategies, health and livability intents, health and livability strategies. So these will be the core areas, and our objectives will be to explain what should be our intent towards like location and transportation categories, site selection, providing and encouraging the use of alternate transportations, understanding the process for determining the density around a project site, means how many people per unit area is living in that space and how we can densify that so that the population can be like saturated in one area rather than expanding that site abruptly, which is going to create bigger carbon footprint and more challenges will be faced. And how to identify it if we have a choice of sites. So how to decide which site is more appropriate, more better, is high priority site selection and importance of walkability. All of these are very important. So we'll be going through, skimming through all of these one by one towards defining, understanding how these things matter. According to the US Energy Information Administration, or EIA, the transportation emission contributed to 33% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the United States in 2008. Though this statistics is a bit old, but at the moment, this has surpassed the existing level, which clearly defines, that transportation becomes one of the major key aspect while we are selecting a site towards a function or a building which will be located to it. So if, let me zoom in a bit, let me share this statistics with you. So if you call for the electric power generation, its dissemination and utilization through alternate resources, not through like the renewable resources. So this is like 41% of the greenhouse gas emissions by the sector wise, which is the biggest one. The second biggest one is the transportation. The third is residential, commercial, and industrial usage. So the power consumption becomes the biggest contributor. to the greenhouse gas emissions in the US, whereas transportation lies at the second one. But still, 33% back in 2008 has been surpassed, and it is considered now around 40% because transportation networks, road networks, expansion of cities, urbanization, all these phenomena have in different ways contributed towards a rise in the carbon emissions, a rise in the carbon dioxide emission across the globe, and has resulted in different kind of challenges, including climate change and abrupt changes in the season patterns, weather patterns, and making it difficult for livability and making it difficult for managing the generation of food and agriculture. Now, if we see to this thing with respect to emissions by major fuel basis, you can see 43% belongs to the petroleum. Since the majority of automobiles in the world use gasoline derived from the petroleum, reducing vehicular travel will reduce the amount of CO2 released into the atmosphere. That means on the basis of the criteria for site selection, we have to see in what ways the end users need to use less amount of fuel for their survivability, for their livability, for their daily base needs, and can eliminate that component by reducing the usage of their vehicles. Are you following me? Now, if we have like petroleum on the 43% side, that means a major contribution. Obviously, cars aren't running on coal, natural gas is utilized, but all of these three resources are non-renewable resources. Once depleted, once used, they are not coming back. So keeping these challenges intact, we have to understand that's a selection of a site for any project. We need to see how far, for example, just for example, let me share, like if you develop or design a housing unit, you need to see what towards the selection of the site. Is there a market close by? Is there a healthcare facility close by? Based on the users or the residents of that facility, do they need school or some colleges to be close by? Are the children in that facility? So all of these things, if are close in the vicinity, probably they won't be needing a vehicle to move across. And since they won't be needing a vehicle, all right, a vehicle to move across these areas, it will help save a lot of energy and will also reduce the carbon footprint. Probably that would be there. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Like the selection of site is going to contribute to that. That is the first important characteristics that we need to consider while we are designing, or even if a house or a building or a commercial complex is already there. But we need to understand how far or how green or sustainable that facility is. We have to look towards its site selection criteria. Is everyone on board? I
Yeah.
hope I'm
Yeah.
audible. I hope you all can hear me and can understand the concept.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Because it has to be a two-way communication. Otherwise, I might like stop and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions to ensure that you are on board, not only with me, but the concept is clear. With respect to lead, either it's GA or it's AP, one of the most critical aspects, apart from like memorizing some of the facts and figures and memorizing some of the code, you need to have a very clear, concise, conceptual framework. I hope this term is like clear to everyone. Conceptual framework. I'm just writing it down so that I don't misspell that. And everybody can read that. I hope this, have you ever gone through this word, conceptual framework? Anyone? Great. Can you tell me what it is? How do you understand the word?
It is that you should understand the concept rather than memorizing a couple of phrases in order to prepare for an exam. It's more that a conceptual framework that you need to go through. Yeah.
Yes. Very relevant, very relevant. It's a basis of understanding of a concept on which you can build over with more detailed information later. Yes, absolutely. A conceptual framework means on the basis, have you seen a picture? It always has a frame around it. It has a frame around it so that it can be hanged, it can be displayed somewhere, it can be put somewhere. Without a frame, what happens? The picture is a piece of paper which might not get settled at any point. So the frame helps to not only like surround and define the parameters and the boundary of a picture. In a very similar way, when we see conceptual framework, we are basically defining the scope of the concept which will be applicable, all right, the scope of the concept which will be applicable to the ideas we are putting forward to ensure the ideas which we have put forward to ensure that those ideas remain relevant and we can get the best benefit out of it. So with the help of conceptual framework, what you build is the understanding, is the concept, is the main source of idea or knowledge behind it, which will help you not only better grab the idea, but to move forward towards understanding. In a very similar way, when we opt for LEED exam, either it's AP or it's GA, there is a lot of conceptual framework which comes into the question. And that has to be an kind of like analytical questions where they will be asking you if you have got like three, four these choices, what will be the most appropriate one? And out of all of those choices, there will be one which is the most appropriate one. That is where the analytical skills comes into the play, and the conceptual framework will become the foundation or the fundamentals of it. On the basis of that conceptual framework or the concept, you will be able to make a choice that which one is more appropriate, which one is more suitable, and how those things will be taken forward. Okay. In a very similar way, in a very similar way, either a building has already been built or it is yet to be built. Since it will be a physical structure on site, so we need to evaluate the site with respect to how it has been built, how it will be treated, how it will be taken forward, how it will be utilized, who will be the end users, and all of those parameters have to be established. And one of the reasons why we are very much concerned about the choice of the site is to ensure that whenever we are analyzing a site, its relevance with the context is established and it doesn't cause damage to environment as well as the site itself. So these becomes the basic cofactors. So when we talk of location and transportation, or in other words, the LT category, it contains a few concepts or ideas like the brownfield, like the transportation, and density credits from the sustainable sites category, as well as other new credits related to sensitive land protection and green vehicles. These are some of the core aspects which we need to consider with respect to the selection of the site and the questions that probably could be there towards analysis of those parameters. Like projects using any of the adaptations of the LEED for building design and construction, that is BD plus C rating system, can earn between 5 and 20 points for locating the project within the boundary of a development certified in the LEED for neighborhood development, if it is applicable. But since in some of the areas it is not, so we base to get points on the basis of these categories like brownfield, can be one of the areas, transportation, density credits, as well as land protection and green vehicles utilization or provisions to have green vehicles in those areas would be a value addition in that case. The first option for the LT means location and transportation surrounding is surrounding density and diverse uses. These focuses requires the project in a near high density locations. For example, we need to understand how these will be taken forward and how those will be looked after with respect to the selection of the site. For example, let me just zoom in a bit and let me share it with you. This points for average density. It's like 22,000 or 35,000, and like the combined density square feet per acre of buildable land. The areas are mentioned. The residential density is like 7 persons per acre or 12 persons per acre. The higher the density, the better the points. The reason being this, that the higher the density is, the more condensed the facility, the more condensed the built form, and more people would be facilitated in it. So there would be like higher density leading to a better planning and optimized usage of the facility, and is going to give you more points on the LEED certification on any building or any project that you're opting for. This is like one way of doing that. Diverse uses is a very important element of surrounding density. Diverse uses means you are going to have like educational uses close by, you have got some medical facility close by, you have got the market close by, you have got the community services close by, you have the parking available in the nearby facility. So all of these things are very closely related. So since a school is there, probably a college facility is there, all of these things are close by, they are not far, you don't have to use a car or another vehicle or local transportation system. Still, you will be able to manage a lot of good things, and it won't cause you to use your vehicles or to burn the petroleum or any other things that will be there to ensure that a minimal based system Now we have to like look into these things by calculating the population which is available in that area or the complex, as well as the facility which we are considering for it. So the people who will be utilizing them, as well as the neighborhood, they will be utilized in analyzing. Like if you are developing a new neighborhood and there is only one building there, and you have got a very few little residents in that whole facility, that means it is going to have a comparatively less density. But on the opposite side, with the passage of time, it does evolve. So initial state, in the initial conditions, in the initial circumstances, probably it might not have a very good ranking, but with the passage of time, it is going to evolve into a better one. Now, these are the categories and their use types. Let me share with you. Just give me a second. I hope it's readable to you. These are the diverse uses which we should be looking after towards getting some good points. And for our buildings, which we will be like opting for certifying in the future, as well as trying to understand which gaps are there. I hope it's readable, Ji?
Yes, we can
So if
read.
you can read that. All right. With respect to like food retail, supermarket, or the grocery store is there. Community serving retail means some convenience store or some farmers market or a hardware store, a pharmacy, or some other facilities are there. With respect to the services, a bank, gym, health club, family entertainment avenue, like a theater or some other indoor or outdoor sports facilities nearby, hair care, laundry, dry cleaner, restaurant, cafes, those are in the nearby vicinity. Then we have to look towards like civic and community based facilities, like some senior care is there, licensed one, a child care, licensed one is there, means a healthcare facility is there. Then we do need to look after community or recreation center is provided, some cultural facilities there. It's not a necessity that all of these are there, but if most of them are there, that means it will be facilitated. Now, consider it also from a different perspective of a community, that if these spaces are over there, like some educational facilities there, government offices or public services offices are there, medical facilities there, places of worship, fire station, police station, some post offices in the, how close these should be to our site. We have to look into the vicinity with respect that you don't have to use a vehicle. For example, if it is like at a distance of like 1000 meters to around like 1200 or 1300 meters distance, so they can be facilitated based on the distance.
I think
Like that is
usually they say, it's 10, 10 minutes walk or 5 minutes walk within proximity of this. So is there a specific detailed, I don't know, like range of distance
it varies. Actually, it varies. Like if you have a kind of a land which is flat, it isn't terrain, it isn't like a mountainous region, then you can utilize a kind of a distance on the basis of a radius of like 1 kilometer radius. If all of these facilities, or 1.5 kilometer radius, all of these facilities are in the nearby, that means it's a kind of a facility. Probably you won't be needing a vehicle or a car to drive to. It is like close by. You can just walk for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes and you will be reaching there. That's exactly how the distance versus the time is compared. On the opposite side, if you have a terrained site, a site where there is slope or where it is hard to walk or where the old people cannot walk or the children cannot walk, then you have to consider those facilities can be nearby, or some other local transport or a carpooling system if is available, or the people who would be needing can facilitate towards movement, they will be considered over there. So the distance usually is considered based on the timeline, as you have stated, like 10 minutes to 15 minutes or 12 minutes on average, as well as a distance of around like 1 kilometers, 1000 meters to 1200, 1300 meters, in which you can like achieve a radius and can easily move across. Like if you have a number of streets from the place where you are living and you have to go to another place, you have to change a number of streets. So though the radius, if I see from the top of the facility, will be around like 1 kilometers or maybe even less than that, but the distance would be a little more longer because you have to move from one street to another street. Then at the end of the street, you turn left or you turn right and you go back and forth, and all these kind of things do happen. So it is important. It is important that you have these facilities in the neighborhood, in the close by, and the preference is that it's, if it is like in a walkable distance where you don't need to use a car, then it's absolutely considered as valid to give you points when you are considering a building or facility or a context for that LEED certification or for LEED evaluation even. So important thing over here, as you can see, it is like 800 meters walking distance of 7 or more diverse uses. That gives the facility like now 800 meters or half of a mile. That will give you a very safe and site. Okay. You know what that means. But with 800 meters distance, that is something which is viable, workable, acceptable, and you probably don't have to use a car or a petroleum-based vehicle for the movement. Reason being this, that if even there can be times when you have to like carry some equipment with you, carry some groceries or some other stuff, and you can use your other like bicycles or kind of stuff like that can be utilized, or small carts can be used for that. So you need to avoid utilizing the burning of the petroleum product like fuel or gasoline. So that will help in that baseline parameters. Increase in the use of mass transit. I hope this point is clear, the previous one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move on. The other is the use of mass transit. Since all of these facilities, if you try to concentrate within one neighborhood, then you might have to add another similar kind of a facility after like 800 meters radius or 1 kilometer radius. That means after like 1.5 to 2 kilometer, you have to provide another facility, which becomes sometimes difficult because the higher the number of facilities, the more business you will be needing for them to survive. And with lesser population and higher number of businesses over there, it might not be very sustainable in the long run. So sometimes when you do know that the distance between one facility and your house or the home or the dwelling is more than 1 kilometers or 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers, then you have to opt for a vehicular movement. You cannot be dependent, like the weather might not be good, the climatic conditions might not be good. It might not be even secure sometimes in different kind of neighborhoods. It might not be secure to even move across. So in that case, increase in the use of mass transit, like the number of occupants per vehicle and alternate fuel sources, can reduce the negative impact of transportation as well. Like if we have green buses, or if we have buses which do not use diesel and use like other natural gas or other alternate resources, or those which are electric buses, which are now started getting available in different regions across the globe, you can see. So those will add more value to that neighborhood, because if you don't have access to those like facilities or to those buses, then it will become difficult. So what I would like is that you need to understand that these gaps, these parameters, these facilities have to be taken or looked after with respect to the selection of site. If like, for example, you have built a small like your dwelling or a kind of like a farmhouse or some other facility which is a bit away from the road. That means even if the local transportation system was there, you have to move to that point where the bus will come, and for that you might need some transportation. So that kind of a facility design is not like adding something good to the environment. You are adding a kind of negative impact to the environment, which has to be reduced. So utilizing the local transportation or the mass transport system, which has more occupants per vehicle, means number of occupants in a bus will be like 30, maybe 40, maybe 50, which is per vehicle, higher number of users as compared to a car, which might have like maximum 4 or 5. That gives more benefit to the society and the environment rather than the car itself. LEED certified buildings typically have as little parking as possible to encourage carpooling or alternative methods of travel. Like if you have one facility where you can utilize, like if you are going to a college, so, or you have a commercial facility where you work. So preference these days is that if on your way you can pick up 2 or 3 different people who can opt for a carpool, it is going to help you save not only the money and the fuel, but will also create less pollution in the environment, which gives more credit, more value towards the facility design itself. That the lesser the parking, that since if supposedly there are like 20 persons working in one office, and they cannot afford to have like 20 vehicles available parking outside for that office. So what they do is this: if they have like for that facility or that organization, which has like 20% or 25% working with them, they might have like 2 to 3 different car parking facility. So if people can opt for like 5% per car, they will be able to opt for 4 or 5 cars availability to ensure all of them can be like brought to the office, and will help manage all of these gaps through carpooling. So it will depend upon the availability of the number of car parking per office, which will help us establish these grounds. When the project is located in an area that has access to a variety of transportation modes, greenhouse gas emissions from car travel can be reduced as well. Like if you can walk to the site, that is one way of doing that. If you have a local bus, absolutely fine. If you have a rail network which is available, and alternate choices there. So the more the choices that you have, like carpooling is there, a bus in the local situation, what do we do in situations where the building code forces a large amount of parking? In that point, you do need to provide the parking in those areas where we have to ensure that the parking facility fulfills the requirement of the applicable bylaws. But we do have, number one, few points that I would consider. Number one, that you have ample green spaces available with them. So number two, there should be some green patches, green areas where the infiltration of water into the ground can happen. And third, there could be a parking optimized space, or we may opt for having a parking underneath the building, like in the parking in the basements. Okay, so that will reduce, since it will be built, obviously you will be excavating the site, and the natural capability of the land, if you like cut it down, or you excavate the land or the site for like 5 feet or 10 feet, obviously if you can go a bit lower, can have the foundations, can have the retaining walls, you can have a whole basement parking as well. So you utilize to fulfill all of those requirements, number one. Number two, have ample open spaces on the ground floor level, on the up surface level, so that the rainwater can infiltrate back in the soil rather than letting it throw out through the stormwater drain channels. Because in that way, the context-based water level will start declining. Okay. If you have got some impervious surfaces through which water can penetrate downwards into the ground, that is something which is acceptable. Just like in the later stage in the water efficiency, you will be studying, inshallah, you will be studying rainwater harvesting, which is a very good tool towards understanding how these parameters have to be established. But we need to understand that since, why is basement parking better option than surface parking in terms of LEED? Yes, that's a good question, Ahmed. The reason being this, that with the help of basement parking, you are utilizing that footprint which was already being covered. Okay. Since there will be a building on this site, and the basement or down is going to use the same footprint area, so it will help you use the same footprint for an alternate purpose rather than expanding the built area or the paved area around the facility, which is going to reduce the green areas. So in that way, we can add more value. Like you can have like outside parking as well, obviously on the surface area, but the basement is going to be like more facilitating. Like if you have a parking space underneath, it will be easy for the people to move across vertically upward. So podium parking should also be the same if we build green on top. Yes, it can be. It can be, depending upon how the local applicable bylaws are allowing for those spaces. Like if they say with the help of the podium parking, you can achieve some covered surfaces as well as some semi-covered areas, but still can have green spaces, green options, some patches of green, some tree plantation can be done. All of those can be achieved absolutely fine. Important thing is this, since you will be building a site, you will be excavating a site, so that site would not be available or usable for agriculture, forestation, or any other purpose. So if we can add parking to it, it will be more usable, having diverse uses for the same site rather than building larger paved surface, which is going to create urban heat island effect. Means it is going to absorb a lot of heat. Because of that heat in the context, you are going to have higher energy needs for the building as well, specifically in the hotter regions. So the more the parking that you have, the more temperature rise at that place. And then it has a negative impact on the building facades or the building outdoor spaces. And then you have to replan those things. So if they have green spaces, if they have green patches where some like a sprinkling system can be utilized, where the rainwater can be like used for irrigation, your gray water can be, after processing, can be used for irrigation will be very much helpful. I hope it's clear.